My name is Milton Strathmore, and at 32, I was always called the failure of our wealthy family. I just sat there, taking it in silence, as my father Richard mocked me across our mahogany dining table. "Still working from home?" he sneered, wine glass in hand. I simply nodded, feeling the familiar sting of his disapproval. Then my phone buzzed with a notification I had been waiting for. "Acquisition of Strathmore Dynamics complete. You now own 100% of your family's company." My face remained neutral, but inside, 5 years of struggle had culminated in this moment of vindication. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey of perseverance and sweet, professional revenge. Growing up as a Strathmore meant privilege at every turn. Our family estate sprawled across 5 acres in Connecticut, complete with a tennis court, indoor pool, and a view that made visitors gasp. But all that wealth came with expectations that weighed heavier than any inheritance. Strathmore Dynamics wasn't just a company. It was my grandfather William's legacy. He started it in 1952 with nothing but determination and an innovative approach to industrial manufacturing. My father Richard took over in the 1982 and expanded it into a regional powerhouse. By the time I was born, our family name was synonymous with manufacturing excellence and old money success. Richard Strathmore ran our family the same way he ran his company. With an iron fist, unwavering standards, and a complete intolerance for what he called weakness. He stood 6'3", always in tailored suits, with a voice that could cut through boardroom chatter without ever needing to raise it. "A Strathmore leads from the front," he would tell me and my older brother Alexander. "We build things that last, real things you can touch, not digital nonsense that disappears when the power goes out." My mother Eleanor was the gentle counterbalance to my father's harshness. She came from money too, but brought warmth to our cold mansion. I would often find her in the garden or library, places my father rarely visited. She would smile when I showed her my early computer programs, but always with a cautious glance toward the door. "Your ideas are wonderful, Milton," she would whisper. "But maybe keep them to yourself around your father for now." Alexander was 4 years older than me, and everything a Strathmore should be according to our father. Tall, handsome, charismatic, with a business mind that saw everything in terms of profit margins and market share. He played 3 varsity sports in high school, graduated from Harvard Business School, and started working at Strathmore Dynamics before his diploma even arrived in the mail. Then there was me, shorter than both my father and brother by several inches, more interested in coding than contact sports. I would spend hours in my room taking apart computers and putting them back together, writing programs that could solve problems faster than any human. "When are you going to outgrow these toys, Milton?" my father would ask, standing in my doorway with disappointment etched across his face. "Your brother was closing deals with suppliers when he was your age." My academic achievements were substantial. I maintained a 4 gigapascals throughout high school, won the state mathematics competition 3 years running, and developed a scheduling program that the school administration adopted. But these victories were always measured against Alexander's achievements. "That's nice," my father would say dismissively after any accomplishment. "Did I tell you Alexander just brought in the Henderson contract? $15 million. When college applications came around, the battle lines were drawn more clearly. My father expected me to attend his alma mater and study business. I applied to MIT for computer science instead. "Technology is the future of manufacturing, Dad," I tried explaining. "Integrating advanced software with traditional manufacturing could revolutionize efficiency." "Software doesn't build engines, Milton," he replied. "People who work with their hands do. People who understand the real world." I enrolled at MIT despite his objections. He paid my tuition, but made it clear this was my last chance to get serious before joining the family business properly. During those college years, I could see what my family couldn't. Strathmore Dynamics was successful but becoming increasingly outdated. Their resistance to technological integration meant competitors were gaining advantages in automation, supply chain management, and predictive maintenance. I developed a comprehensive digital transformation plan for Strathmore Dynamics as my senior project. The professor called it visionary and suggested I patent several components. I came home for Christmas break eager to share it with my father. The manufacturing floor operators don't need computers telling them how to do their jobs, he scoffed after a cursory glance at my proposal. This would cost millions to implement with no guaranteed return. But Dad, companies that fail to digitize are falling behind. We could increase output by 20% while reducing costs by 15% within 2 years. Enough, Milton. This family built its wealth through steel and sweat, not silicon. That night, I overheard my parents arguing about my future. He's brilliant in his own way, Richard, my mother insisted. Different from Alexander, but just as valuable. Different doesn't build empires. Eleanor, my father responded. Alexander understands our legacy. Milton wants to turn us into some kind of tech startup. I returned to MIT with renewed determination to prove that technology and traditional manufacturing could not just coexist, but thrive together. Little did I know how completely that determination would transform my life. My graduation day at MIT should have been a pure celebration. I had finished with highest honors in computer science, with 2 of my projects already garnering interest from venture capitalists. The ceremony passed in a blur of pride and possibility as I accepted my diploma, searching the crowd for my family's faces. They had come, of course. Appearances mattered greatly to the Strathmores. My mother beamed with genuine pride, while my father and brother stood stoically in expensive suits that set them apart from most other families. We're having dinner at Winston's to celebrate, my father announced after obligatory photographs. Winston's was his favorite steakhouse, where the manager knew him by name and always kept his preferred whiskey in stock. The trouble began halfway through the meal, after my father had given a toast acknowledging my perseverance through a challenging program. The backhanded compliment was clear to everyone at the table. So, Milton, time to put away the school projects and join the real world, my father said, cutting into his ribeye. I've spoken with Vincent in sales. He'll show you the ropes starting next month. I set down my fork carefully. Actually, Dad, I've been developing something I want to show you. It's software that could revolutionize how Strathmore handles supply chain management. It uses machine learning to predict material needs and market fluctuations before they happen. My father's expression darkened. Not this again. Just hear me out, I said, pulling out my laptop. This isn't theoretical anymore. I've built it, tested it, and it works. Look at these simulations using Strathmore's actual production data from last year. I turned the screen toward him, showing projections that would have saved the company millions in inventory costs while increasing production capacity. Where did you get our company data? Alexander interjected, his voice sharp. Public quarterly reports, plus what Mom shared about production challenges, I explained. You involved your mother in this fantasy? My father's voice dropped dangerously low. It's not a fantasy, Dad. 2 investors have already expressed interest. That was when the real humiliation began. My father laughed, not his authentic laugh, but the dismissive one he reserved for ideas he considered beneath consideration. Playing with computers isn't running a business, Milton. Your brother just secured a $100 million contract with Detroit automakers. That's real business. This, he gestured at my laptop, is a hobby. Alexander joined in, examining my software with exaggerated skepticism. These projections are based on perfect conditions. Have you ever even been on a production floor when a line goes down? Do you understand how suppliers actually operate? The program accounts for variables and unknowns, I defended. That's the whole point of the machine learning component. Machine learning, Alexander repeated mockingly. Machines don't learn, Milton. They do what they're told, just like employees should. My mother tried to intervene. Richard, Alexander, please. This is Milton's graduation dinner. It's fine. Eleanor, my father dismissed her. Milton needs to understand the difference between university projects and the real world. The company has survived 3 generations without algorithms making our decisions. The argument escalated as I desperately tried to make them understand that technology wasn't a threat, but an opportunity. My father grew increasingly irritated by my persistence. Enough, he finally snapped, loudly enough that neighboring tables paused their conversations. Here's what's going to happen. You will join Strathmore Dynamics in the sales department. You will learn the business from the ground up, just like your brother did. In a few years, if you prove yourself, we can discuss your ideas about technology integration. That's my final offer." I looked at him, then at Alexander's smug expression, then at my mother's pleading eyes. "And if I want to pursue my software development instead?" I asked quietly. My father's expression hardened. "Then you do it without the Strathmore name or resources. You want to reject the path this family has laid out for you? Fine. But don't expect me to finance your rebellion." The restaurant seemed to fall silent around us. In that moment, something crystallized within me. Years of dismissal, of being the square peg in the round hole of Strathmore expectations, all compressed into a single moment of clarity. "Then I'll do it on my own," I said, closing my laptop. "Don't be dramatic, Milton," Alexander scoffed. "You've never even paid your own rent." "Then it's time I learned," I replied, standing up. What followed was a scene my family would later describe to relatives as my immature outburst. I call it my Independence Day. I thanked my mother for her support, told my father I would prove him wrong, and informed Alexander that dinosaurs never see the asteroid coming. I left the restaurant with my graduation gifts unopened and took a cab back to our hotel. By morning, I had packed my belongings and checked out before my family awoke. My mother found me waiting for a taxi outside. She pressed something into my hand, tears streaming down her face. "This was your grandmother's," she whispered. It was an antique watch, platinum with sapphires, worth at least $50,000. She was also underestimated. "Sell it if you need to. Just promise you'll call me sometimes." I hugged her fiercely. "I will, Mom, and I'll make you proud." The taxi arrived, and I left with just 2 suitcases, my laptop and a family heirloom I hoped I wouldn't need to sell. That night, I checked into a small apartment in Cambridge that a classmate had vacated. The space was tiny, with a mattress on the floor and second-hand furniture. It smelled of previous tenants and needed a thorough cleaning, but it was mine. I sat on the bare mattress, feeling equal parts terrified and liberated. My phone rang. It was my father. I let it go to voicemail. "Milton, this childish tantrum has gone far enough. Call me when you're ready to apologize and accept your responsibilities." I deleted the message, opened my laptop, and began coding. If I was going to fail, I would fail on my own terms. The transition from wealthy family scion to independent entrepreneur was brutal. Money, which had never been a consideration in my life, suddenly dictated everything. My savings, substantial by normal standards but meager for what I was trying to achieve, began disappearing at an alarming rate. I paid 6 months of rent up front to secure my apartment without needing a cosigner. I invested in better computer equipment and servers to host my developing software. I lived on ramen noodles and discount groceries while working 18-hour days, refining my supply chain management program, which I named SupplySync. Reality hit hard that first winter when my heat went out during a Massachusetts cold snap, and I couldn't afford the emergency repair fee. I worked wrapped in blankets, wearing gloves with the fingertips cut out so I could still type. I thought of our family home with its perfect climate control and wondered if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. The first breakthrough came at a local tech meetup. I had started attending these gatherings to network and potentially find investors. Most attendees were either students with big ideas but no experience, or corporate developers looking to recruit talent. I stood out as something in between. "Your algorithmic approach to supply prediction is fascinating," said a voice behind me after I'd answered a question during a group discussion. "But your distribution model needs work." The speaker was Nathan Chen, a brilliant programmer who had worked for several major tech companies before burning out on corporate culture. He had precisely the skills I lacked, with experience in creating user interfaces that actual humans could navigate intuitively. "Buy me a beer, and I'll tell you why your beautiful back-end architecture is wrapped in the digital equivalent of a burlap sack," he offered. 1 beer turned into 4, and by the end of the night, I had a co-founder. Nathan was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, practical, and completely unimpressed by family names or legacies. He judged code on its merits alone. "Why leave a cushy trust fund life to bootstrap a startup?" he asked bluntly. I told him about my family's rejection of technological innovation and my father's ultimatum. Ah, Nathan nodded. Revenge coding. I like it. It's not about revenge, I protested. It's about proving the concept works. Sure, he smirked. And if it works spectacularly and makes you rich while proving your family wrong, that's just a bonus. With Nathan on board, SupplySync evolved rapidly. But finding investors proved nearly impossible. We were too early in development for traditional venture capital, yet required too much funding for angel investors. Every pitch meeting ended the same way. Interesting concept, but manufacturing companies are slow to adopt new technology. Come back when you have a paying client. Meanwhile, Alexander had been promoted to COO of Strathmore Dynamics. The business press covered his rapid ascension with admiring profiles about the rising star continuing a family legacy. Every article was a knife twist, especially when they inevitably mentioned the founder's other son who had chosen a different path. Strathmore Dynamics reported record profits that year, with Alexander claiming credit for streamlining operations. I knew their success was partly due to a temporary market advantage from a competitor's factory fire, but the narrative was still painful to accept. The nightmares began around this time. I would dream of standing in the Strathmore boardroom, presenting SupplySync to executives, only to have my father appear and laugh that dismissive laugh until everyone joined in. I would wake up in a cold sweat, more determined than ever. My mother called occasionally, always when my father was traveling for business. She would share careful updates about family matters, never directly mentioning my departure or the tension it created. Your father expanded the Seattle facility, she mentioned in one call. That's a mistake, I replied automatically. Seattle's experiencing a shortage of skilled machinists. He should have chosen Portland. There was a pause. How would you know that? I still monitor industry trends, Mom. It's what SupplySync does. She changed the subject quickly, but in her next call mentioned that Strathmore was having unexpected staffing difficulties in Seattle. 8 months into development, with our funds critically low, Nathan and I took side jobs. He did freelance programming, while I taught coding classes at a local community center. We worked on SupplySync nights and weekends, our pace slowing but determination undiminished. The real change came when I met Jessica Rodriguez at a startup funding workshop. She was a financial consultant who specialized in helping tech companies structure their finances to attract investment. Your pitch is too technical, she told me bluntly after hearing my presentation. You're talking about algorithms and efficiency metrics when you should be talking about pain points and solutions. But the algorithms are what make the solution possible, I argued. Investors don't care how the engine works if the car gets them where they need to go, she countered. Jessica agreed to help us refine our pitch in exchange for future equity. She restructured our business plan, focusing on the problems SupplySync solved rather than the technical brilliance behind it. Her practical approach complemented my technical vision perfectly. Our personal connection grew alongside our professional relationship. Jessica was brilliant, driven, and completely unimpressed by my family name. She judged me solely on my ideas and determination. Your family rejected something valuable when they rejected you, she told me one night over cheap takeout in our office. Their loss. With Jessica's help, we secured 3 small clients willing to test our beta version. They were tiny manufacturing operations compared to Strathmore Dynamics, but they provided crucial feedback and testimonials. Your system saved us 23% on inventory costs last quarter, reported one client. But the interface is confusing for our older staff. These real-world tests helped us refine SupplySync from an elegant theoretical solution into a practical business tool. However, the revenue from these small clients barely covered our server costs, let alone salaries. The lowest point came 13 months after leaving my family. Our office lease was up for renewal at a higher rate, and my apartment landlord had sold the building to a developer planning to convert it to luxury condos. Within 2 weeks, I was effectively homeless and officeless. We moved our equipment into Nathan's 1-bedroom apartment, and I slept on his couch. Showering at the gym and living out of a duffel bag, I had never been further from the privileged life I'd known. Nathan, seeing our situation deteriorate, Received a job offer from Google with a six-figure salary and comprehensive benefits. I need to think about it, Milton, he told me honestly. We're running on fumes here. That night, alone in the office while Nathan was at a recruitment dinner, I experienced my darkest moment of doubt. I opened my laptop to check our dwindling bank account and saw a news alert about Strathmore Dynamics acquiring a smaller competitor. Strathmore expansion continues. Under dynamic father-son leadership, read the headline, with a photo of my father and brother cutting a ribbon at a new facility. I thought about my grandmother's watch, still hidden in my apartment's air vent, the one asset I had refused to sell even at my lowest point. Maybe it was time to admit defeat. Maybe my father had been right all along. I opened my email, started a draft to Nathan releasing him from any obligation to SupplySync, and then stopped. On my screen was an unread message from our smallest client, a family-owned manufacturing business in Rhode Island. Milton, we calculated the numbers again. Your system saved us $147,000 this year. We're a small operation compared to most, but that's the difference between staying afloat and closing our doors. Whatever your plans are for SupplySync, count us in as customers for life. I stared at the message for a long time, then closed the draft email to Nathan. Instead, I began coding a new feature we had discussed, but considered too ambitious for our current resources. I worked through the night, fueled by convenience store coffee and renewed purpose. When Nathan returned the next morning, looking guilty and ready to deliver bad news about taking the Google position, he found me still working. I figured out the inventory prediction algorithm, I told him without looking up. It works. Not theoretically, not in simulations. It really works. Nathan looked over my shoulder at the code, then at the client email I had printed out and taped to the wall. So we keep going? He asked. I finally looked up, exhausted but clear-eyed. We keep going. Jessica had mentioned Marcus Hayes several times in our strategy discussions, a veteran venture capitalist who had funded several successful enterprise software companies. He was known for taking chances on technical founders with limited business experience. He looks for passion and innovation over perfect pitch decks, she explained, but he's incredibly selective about who gets a meeting. It took Jessica 3 months of networking and persistence to secure us a 20-minute slot on Marcus's calendar. We prepared obsessively, refining our demo and practicing our presentation until we could deliver it in our sleep. The Hayes Capital office occupied the top floor of a Boston high-rise, with views of the harbor through floor-to-ceiling windows. The reception area alone was larger than our entire office. Jessica squeezed my hand reassuringly as the assistant led us into the conference room. Marcus Hayes wasn't what I expected. In his late 60s, he wore jeans and a casual button-down rather than the expected power suit. His white hair was slightly disheveled, and reading glasses hung around his neck on a cord. "So you're the Strathmore who left the family business," he said by way of greeting. Interesting choice. My heart sank. If he was focused on my family connection rather than our technology, this meeting was already over. "Let me see what was so important you walked away from a guaranteed executive position at a $100 million company," he continued, gesturing toward our laptop. For the next 15 minutes, I demonstrated SupplySync, while Nathan highlighted key features and Jessica provided context about market applications. Marcus watched in silence, occasionally asking technical questions that suggested he understood the underlying principles better than most investors. When our demo concluded, he removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Your system works in theory. What makes you think manufacturing companies, traditionally the slowest adopters of new technology, will buy in?" This was the question I had prepared for extensively. I pulled up data from our existing clients showing concrete cost savings and efficiency improvements. "These aren't projections or estimates," I explained. "These are actual results from companies currently using our system. Small scale now, but the algorithms are industry agnostic. The larger the operation, the greater the potential savings." Marcus nodded slowly. "And why not take this to Strathmore Dynamics? Family differences aside, wouldn't they be an ideal flagship client?" The question hit a nerve, but Jessica had prepared me for it. Strathmore Dynamics would be a perfect client, I acknowledged. But SupplySync is bigger than one company, even my family's. We're building this for an entire industry. After we left the meeting, Jessica cautioned against excessive optimism. He meets with dozens of startups every month and funds maybe 2 a year. 3 days later, Hayes Capital offered us $2 million in Series A funding for a 20% equity stake. The email came with a personal note from Marcus, backing founders who believe in their vision enough to risk everything. Don't prove your family right by failing. The investment transformed SupplySync overnight. We moved into proper office space, hired 5 employees, and finalized our product for full market release. Nathan led our growing development team. Jessica became our official CFO, and I focused on product vision and client acquisition. Our official launch came 18 months after I had walked away from my family. SupplySync offered features our competitors couldn't match. Our predictive inventory system could forecast material needs with 95% accuracy 3 months in advance. Our production scheduling module optimized factory floor operations to reduce downtime by nearly 20%, and our supplier management platform automated negotiation processes that traditionally required constant human attention. Growth was slow but steady. Small and mid-sized manufacturers signed on first, attracted by our affordable pricing tier and the concrete ROI we could demonstrate. Each new client provided testimonials that helped attract others. 2 years after leaving Strathmore Dynamics, I had a profitable company with 12 employees and a growing reputation in the manufacturing software space. My mother had been dropping hints about a family reconciliation during the upcoming Christmas holiday. "Your father would never admit it, but he respects what you've built," she claimed during one of our calls. "Just come for dinner, no business talk." I agreed reluctantly, partly from missing my mother and partly from a desire to show my success in person rather than through second-hand reports. The family home was unchanged, still imposing and immaculate. Walking through the front door felt like stepping back in time, except now I entered as a CEO rather than a disappointing son. My mother embraced me warmly. My father offered a stiff handshake. Alexander arrived late, making an entrance in an expensive new sports car. Dinner started cordially enough, with careful conversations about neutral topics. But after my father's third scotch, the facade cracked. "So Milton, still playing with your computer program?" he asked with feigned casualness. "SupplySync is doing well," I replied evenly. "We just signed our 20th client last month." "Small operations though, right? Mom and pop shops?" "Mid-sized manufacturers mostly. Companies doing 20 to 50 million in annual revenue." Alexander scoffed. "That's adorable. We just broke ground on a new facility in Phoenix. $120 million investment. Phoenix is experiencing water restriction issues that will impact manufacturing," I noted. "Your operational costs will be higher than projected." There he goes again. Alexander rolled his eyes at our father, always thinking he knows better than people with actual experience. "I'm just stating publicly available facts," I said, keeping my voice calm. "The information is there for anyone who looks for it." My father set down his glass firmly. "That's always been your problem, Milton. You think business is about data and algorithms. It's about relationships and instinct. That fancy software of yours can't replace 30 years of experience and connections." "It's not meant to replace experience," I tried explaining. "It's meant to enhance it with better information and automation of routine tasks." "Playing business," my father dismissed. "Your brother just closed a deal with General Motors while you're helping local hardware stores track nuts and bolts." I excused myself early, kissing my mother goodbye and promising to call more regularly. As I left, she pulled me aside. "They're leveraged very heavily for this expansion," she whispered. "Your father would kill me for saying this, but he's betting everything on these new facilities. The board is nervous." That conversation prompted me to look more closely at Strathmore Dynamics' public financial reports. Behind the press releases and positive coverage, I found concerning patterns. Their debt-to-equity ratio had increased dramatically. They were expanding aggressively into new markets without sufficient local expertise. And most worryingly, they were ignoring emerging competitors with more technological integration. Meanwhile, SupplySync continued its steady growth. A major breakthrough came when we won a contract with Lancaster Manufacturing, one of Strathmore's long-standing competitors. They implemented our system across all their facilities and reported a 17% increase in operational efficiency within the first quarter. Our team grew to 25 employees, and we moved to a larger office to accommodate the expansion. The industry began to take notice, with SupplySync winning Most Innovative Enterprise Solution at a prestigious manufacturing technology conference. Jessica and I had been dating quietly for nearly a year, keeping our relationship professional at the office, but building something meaningful in our personal time. "Have you thought about what success really looks like for you?" she asked one night over dinner at her apartment. "Is it building SupplySync into something sustainable, or is it still about proving your family wrong?" "It started as the latter," I admitted. "But now it's about building something I believe in, something that actually helps businesses operate better." "And if Strathmore Dynamics came calling tomorrow, wanting to acquire us?" The question caught me off guard. They wouldn't. My father would never admit he was wrong about technology integration. "But if they did," she persisted, "what would you do?" I considered the question seriously. I'd decline. Not out of spite, but because we're just getting started. SupplySync has potential far beyond what we've achieved so far. Jessica smiled, looking relieved. "That's what I wanted to hear. That you're building this for the right reasons now." I squeezed her hand across the table. "I am, and I'm grateful you're building it with me." SupplySync's growth accelerated dramatically in our third year. Our client base expanded from regional manufacturers to national operations with multiple facilities. Revenue increased by 300% year over year, and our waiting list for implementation grew faster than our team could handle. The press started taking notice, with technology and business publications featuring profiles of our revolutionary approach to manufacturing software. I declined most interview requests, preferring to let our results speak for themselves. But the attention brought us to the radar of larger investors. Marcus Hayes called me directly after a particularly glowing write-up in Forbes. "Time for your Series B round," he announced without preamble. "You need capital to scale properly with this kind of growth." The subsequent funding round brought in $25 million at a valuation that made my head spin. SupplySync was now worth more than I could have imagined when sleeping on Nathan's couch just a few years earlier. My stake in the company represented more personal wealth than I would have inherited in the near term from my family. We expanded to 50 employees, including a dedicated sales team and customer success managers. Nathan led a growing engineering department focused on new feature development, while I split my time between strategic planning and high-level client relations. The call from my mother came unexpectedly one Tuesday afternoon. "Your father had a minor heart attack," she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "He's stable, but the doctors are concerned about his stress levels." I flew to Connecticut that evening, conflicted about seeing my father in a vulnerable state. The hospital room was disconcertingly ordinary for a man who had always seemed larger than life. Richard Strathmore looked smaller against the white sheets, monitoring equipment beeping softly beside him. "You didn't need to come," he said gruffly when I entered. "It was just a warning episode." "Of course I came," I replied, taking the chair beside his bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm surrounded by incompetent doctors who overreact to every little thing," he grumbled. "I need to get back to the office. Things fall apart when I'm not there." My mother and I exchanged glances. Her worried expression told me more than her careful words had conveyed on the phone. Later, in the hospital cafeteria, she filled me in on the reality of the situation. "Strathmore Dynamics is facing serious problems," she admitted. "The Phoenix facility is massively over budget. 2 major clients are threatening to switch to competitors, and Alexander has made some questionable decisions while your father was giving him more control." "What kind of decisions?" I asked. "He fast-tracked an acquisition of a supplier that turned out to have significant quality issues. Now we're contractually bound to use their components, which are causing failures in our finished products." Back at the family home that evening, I encountered Alexander in my father's study, surrounded by financial reports. "Come to check if you're back in the will?" he asked acidly. "I came because our father had a heart attack," I replied evenly. "Family comes first." Alexander laughed bitterly. "That's rich coming from you. Where was family first when you walked out to start your little software project?" "SupplySync isn't a little project anymore, Alexander. We're helping dozens of manufacturers operate more efficiently. Good for you, he dismissed. Meanwhile, I'm trying to keep a real company afloat while Dad recovers. His words were hostile, but I noticed the dark circles under his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. For the first time, I saw my brother not as my rival, but as someone drowning under pressures he wasn't prepared to handle. Is there anything I can do to help? I offered genuinely. Unless you can magically fix supply chain issues and quality control problems, no. He gathered the papers hastily. Some of us have actual work to do, not just lines of code to write. I returned to Boston with my mother's concerns weighing heavily on my mind. During our next board meeting, Marcus Hayes raised an unexpected topic. We should discuss acquisition targets, he suggested. With your current valuation and cash reserves, strategic acquisitions could accelerate growth into new markets. Jessica presented a list of potential targets, mostly smaller software companies with complementary technologies that could be integrated into our platform. But my mind kept returning to my mother's words about Strathmore Dynamics' troubles. What about manufacturing companies? I asked suddenly. Not just software. Nathan looked confused. That's not our business model. We make software for manufacturers. We don't make things ourselves. Vertical integration has advantages, I argued. We could implement our systems directly, demonstrate real-world results in our own facilities. Marcus studied me intently. You're thinking about specific targets, aren't you? The room fell silent, as everyone realized what I was suggesting. Jessica spoke first. Milton, acquiring struggling manufacturing companies, could be seen as personal rather than strategic, especially if those companies have connections to your family. It would be a purely business decision, I insisted. If a company is undervalued due to mismanagement but has good fundamentals, it represents an opportunity regardless of who currently owns it. The discussion continued for hours, with valid concerns raised about stepping outside our core competency and the capital requirements of operating physical manufacturing facilities. I listened to every perspective, then made a request. I'd like Jessica to conduct an objective analysis of Strathmore Dynamics as a potential acquisition target, not because of my connection, but because it might represent exactly the opportunity we're discussing. My team was skeptical, but professional. Jessica assembled a small group to conduct the analysis, promising complete objectivity. 2 weeks later, she presented her findings to the board. Strathmore Dynamics is significantly undervalued based on their assets and market position, she began. Their current financial difficulties stem primarily from management decisions rather than fundamental business problems. Their client relationships remain strong despite recent quality issues. She displayed projections showing how SupplySync's technology, implemented across Strathmore's operations, could resolve their efficiency problems while providing us with manufacturing capability and an established client base. From a purely business perspective, she concluded, it represents a unique opportunity. The question is whether the personal complications outweigh the business advantages. Marcus Hayes leaned forward. How would you approach this, Milton? The Strathmore name carries weight. A hostile takeover attempt would generate significant press, not all of it favorable. Not hostile, I clarified. Private and discreet. We could form a holding company to make the initial approach, conduct due diligence without revealing our identity until necessary. The board approved exploring the possibility, with strict parameters around maintaining our core business during any acquisition process. Jessica and our legal team began creating a shell company called Horizon Ventures that would serve as our public face during preliminary negotiations. That night, alone in my apartment, I experienced intense, mixed emotions about potentially acquiring my family's company. The professional opportunity was clear, but the personal implications were complex. Would this be perceived as revenge rather than sound business strategy? Jessica came over after finishing the initial legal paperwork. Are you sure about this? She asked directly. Once we start, it will be difficult to back out without consequences. If the business case wasn't solid, would you support moving forward? I countered. No, she admitted. But the business case is solid. I'm asking if you can separate the business decision from the personal history. I thought about my father in the hospital bed, my mother's worried expression, and Alexander's desperate attempt to manage a situation beyond his capabilities. "This isn't about revenge," I finally said. "It's about saving a good company from bad management. If it weren't Strathmore Dynamics, we'd still make this move based on the numbers." "Then let's do it right," Jessica decided. "Professional, strategic, and above all, ethical." The next morning, Horizon Ventures sent its first communication to Strathmore Dynamics, expressing interest in discussing potential investment opportunities. Alexander's response was predictably dismissive, stating that the company was not seeking outside investors at this time. What he didn't know was that we had already begun purchasing available shares through various channels, gradually increasing our position while staying below reporting thresholds. The game had begun, and my family didn't even know they were players. The conference room at Strathmore Dynamics headquarters felt surreal as I entered for the first time in nearly 4 years. Family photos still lined the hallway, including several featuring a younger me at company events. I wondered if anyone would make the connection despite my new appearance. I had grown a neatly trimmed beard, wore contacts instead of glasses, and had developed a confidence that changed my entire demeanor. Jessica and our legal team accompanied me as representatives of Horizon Ventures. We had requested this meeting after increasing our ownership stake to 15% through open market purchases, enough to demand attention, but not enough to trigger defensive measures. Richard Strathmore entered first, moving more slowly than I remembered, but still projecting authority. Alexander followed, along with their CFO and legal counsel. My father's eyes passed over me without recognition, focusing instead on Jessica as the apparent leader of our group. "Horizon Ventures," my father began coldly. "You've been accumulating our stock, despite clear signals that we're not interested in outside investment. I'm curious why you've wasted both our time with this meeting." "We believe Strathmore Dynamics is significantly undervalued," Jessica responded professionally. "Our analysis suggests operational inefficiencies that, if addressed, could increase shareholder value substantially." "And what exactly qualifies Horizon to make such assessments?" Alexander challenged. "Your company appeared out of nowhere 6 months ago. Our expertise is in identifying manufacturing operations with modernization potential," I answered, speaking for the first time. "Strathmore has excellent fundamentals, but outdated processes." My father studied me more carefully, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. I maintained a neutral expression, behaving as if we'd never met. "We're here to discuss a substantial investment that would provide capital for necessary modernization while allowing current management to maintain operational control," Jessica continued. "We've prepared an initial term sheet for your consideration." The discussion proceeded tensely, but professionally. I spoke when necessary about technical aspects of potential improvements, watching my father's expression shift from dismissal to reluctant interest as the financial terms became clear. Alexander remained hostile throughout, clearly viewing any outside investment as a threat to his position. "We'll need time to review your proposal," my father finally stated, "and we'll require full disclosure of Horizon's ownership structure and financial backing before proceeding further." "Of course," Jessica agreed smoothly. "Our legal team will provide all necessary documentation. We would also request access to conduct appropriate due diligence." Alexander objected immediately. "That's proprietary information. We're not opening our books to a company we know nothing about." "Standard acquisition procedures require transparency from both parties," our lawyer interjected. "Any information shared would be governed by strict confidentiality agreements." My father overruled Alexander's objections, agreeing to limited due diligence in exchange for comprehensive disclosure about Horizon. As the meeting concluded, he approached me directly. "I apologize, but have we met before? You seem familiar." I maintained my composure. "I attend many industry events. Perhaps we've crossed paths." He nodded, unsatisfied but unable to place me. "What did you say your name was?" "William Clark," I replied, using my middle name and my mother's maiden name. The due diligence process revealed far more serious problems than even my mother had indicated. Alexander had made several disastrous decisions in his role as COO, including forward purchasing materials at peak prices just before a market decline, implementing cost-cutting measures that compromised product quality, and most concerning, using accounting practices that bordered on fraudulent to mask the company's deteriorating financial position. "They're in worse shape than we thought," Jessica told me privately after reviewing their confidential financial data. "Cash flow is critical. They violated loan covenants with 2 major banks, and they're at risk of losing their largest client due to quality issues." "Can the business be saved?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "With immediate intervention, yes. The core business remains sound, but current management is driving it into the ground." Our team debated how to proceed. The ethical course was to continue open negotiations, but Alexander had begun attacking Horizon in industry circles, describing us as vulture capitalists seeking to dismember a family business. His hostility threatened to derail the process entirely. The situation shifted dramatically when a small financial news outlet published an article questioning Strathmore Dynamics' financial reporting practices. The piece contained information that could only have come from their confidential statements, though nothing we had accessed during due diligence. "Did anyone on our team leak this?" I demanded when the article appeared. "Absolutely not," Jessica assured me. "But Strathmore has other investors who might have similar concerns. This likely came from someone on their side." The article triggered exactly what Alexander had feared. Strathmore's stock dropped 20% in 2 days as larger financial publications picked up the story. Lenders began requesting additional collateral for outstanding loans, and competitors started approaching their clients with aggressive offers. My mother called in a panic. "Milton, it's falling apart. Your father had another episode after the stock collapsed. Alexander is blaming some investment company that's been circling the business. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss a potential sale." "Who's the potential buyer?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "A company called Horizon Ventures. Richard says they're vultures, but the board thinks they might be the only option left." I felt a complex mix of emotions. The situation had escalated faster than intended, potentially harming people I still cared about despite our differences. Yet the outcome was exactly what our business strategy had aimed for. "Mom, I need to tell you something important, but you have to keep it confidential for now." After a long silence following my revelation, she spoke quietly. "I always knew you would prove yourself, Milton. I just never imagined it would happen this way." "I'm not doing this for revenge," I assured her. "Strathmore Dynamics is a good company being mismanaged. I can save it. Your father won't see it that way, nor will Alexander. Then that's their problem to work through. The board will act in the best interest of shareholders." The final negotiation meeting was scheduled at Strathmore headquarters. My legal team advised against attending personally once my identity was revealed, but I insisted on being present. This needed to end face-to-face. My father, Alexander, their executive team, and several board members were assembled when we arrived. As Jessica began her opening remarks, I noticed my mother slip quietly into the back of the room, nodding almost imperceptibly in my direction. Before we proceed, I interrupted Jessica gently. "I believe full transparency is necessary for these discussions to continue productively." I stood, feeling every eye in the room on me. Horizon Ventures was formed by SupplySync Technologies, specifically to facilitate this acquisition. I am not William Clark. I am Milton Strathmore, CEO of SupplySync, and the true party interested in acquiring Strathmore Dynamics. The room erupted in confusion. Alexander jumped to his feet, face contorted with rage. "This is a setup, a personal vendetta disguised as a business transaction." My father remained seated, his expression unreadable as he studied me through narrowed eyes. "This is not personal," I stated firmly when the commotion subsided. "It's business. SupplySync has the technology and capital to restore Strathmore Dynamics to profitability and growth. Our due diligence has uncovered significant operational and financial issues that threaten the company's survival. I directed our financial team to distribute folders containing detailed analysis of Strathmore's situation, including evidence of Alexander's questionable accounting practices and the projected outcomes if current management continued. "This is corporate espionage," Alexander sputtered. "You had no right to access this information." Every document in those folders was provided willingly by Strathmore Dynamics to Horizon Ventures during the agreed-upon due diligence process, our lawyer clarified. Nothing was obtained improperly. The board members began reviewing the materials with growing concern. My father remained silent, his complexion paling, as he absorbed the implications. "Our offer remains on the table," I continued. "Full acquisition at yesterday's closing price, which represents a 30% premium over current fair market value given the information now available to investors. We will maintain the Strathmore brand, retain most employees, and implement technologies that will resolve the operational issues identified." Alexander turned to my father desperately. "Dad, you can't seriously consider selling your father's company to him." Richard Strathmore finally spoke, his voice subdued. "The board will require time to verify this information and consider the offer." "Of course," I agreed. "But I should note that our analysis will be shared with major shareholders, regardless of the board's decision. We believe they deserve to know the company's true financial position." The threat was clear but legally sound. If the board rejected our offer, we would take the case directly to shareholders with evidence of mismanagement. As the meeting adjourned, my father asked me to remain behind. When the room had emptied except for us, he regarded me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "When did you become so ruthless?" he asked quietly. "I learned from the best," I replied. "You taught me that business isn't personal. It's about results and value. And what value do you place on family?" "Family is irreplaceable," I acknowledged. "But Strathmore Dynamics isn't family. It's a business that employs hundreds of people whose livelihoods are currently at risk due to mismanagement." He nodded slowly. "Your grandfather would be impressed with what you've built. He was an innovator too, in his time." "I know. That's why I want to save his company, not dismantle it." My father extended his hand formally. "The board will likely accept your offer. I'll support it on one condition." "What's that?" "You keep the Strathmore name on the building." 2 weeks later, the acquisition was finalized. As I sat at the family dinner table where this story began, my phone buzzed with the final confirmation. "Acquisition of Strathmore Dynamics complete. You now own 100% of your family's company." I looked up to see my father watching me knowingly, perhaps recognizing in that moment that I had finally beaten him at his own game. The integration of SupplySync and Strathmore Dynamics presented enormous technical and cultural challenges. Two companies with different philosophies, workflows, and expectations suddenly became one. As the architect of this merger, I was determined to handle it with respect for both organizations. My first official act as owner of Strathmore Dynamics was addressing their employees. Standing in the same factory floor where my grandfather had built his first engines, I spoke candidly. "I know many of you are concerned about what this acquisition means for your jobs and this company's legacy. Let me be clear. Strathmore Dynamics will continue operating under its historic name. Its workforce will be preserved and strengthened. The only significant change will be modernization that makes your work more effective and your jobs more secure." I implemented changes gradually, focusing first on the critical operational issues threatening client relationships and financial stability. SupplySync's technology was introduced in phases, with comprehensive training and support to ease the transition. Resistance was inevitable, especially from long-term employees loyal to my father and brother, but results quickly silenced many critics. Within 3 months, production efficiency increased by 22%. Quality control issues that had plagued recent orders were identified and resolved systematically. Client confidence began to return as delivery timelines were met consistently for the first time in years. The most difficult conversation was with my father, now officially retired but still processing the dramatic shift in family dynamics. I invited him to lunch at his favorite restaurant, away from both corporate offices. "I want to offer you a position," I said after we had ordered. "Advisory role. No day-to-day responsibilities, but available for consultation on strategic decisions." He regarded me skeptically. "A ceremonial title to soothe my ego?" "Recognition of 5 decades of experience," I corrected. "You built something remarkable, Dad. Your methods needed updating, but your industry knowledge remains valuable." "And Alexander? What becomes of him in your new organization?" "That depends on him," I answered honestly. "He has talents, but he needs to recognize his limitations. If he's willing to learn and adapt, there's a place for him." My father nodded slowly. "He's not taking this well." "I didn't expect him to." "Neither did I, when you left," he admitted unexpectedly. "But you've proven your point rather definitively, haven't you?" I smiled slightly. "It wasn't about proving a point. It was about building something I believed in. And now you own both," he observed. Impressive by any standard. It wasn't quite approval, but it was acknowledgement. From my father, that represented significant progress. Alexander's adjustment proved more difficult. His initial reaction was to resign immediately, publicly denouncing the acquisition as a personal vendetta. But when competing firms showed little interest in hiring an executive associated with Strathmore's recent troubles, economic reality forced him to reconsider. Our first meeting as brothers rather than business rivals occurred at my mother's insistence. She hosted us for dinner at her new apartment, having moved from the family estate after my parents' separation following my father's retirement. "This is ridiculous," Alexander snapped when we were left alone. "You orchestrated this entire situation to humiliate me." "I acquired a struggling company with strong fundamentals at a fair market price," I replied calmly. "Your management decisions created the vulnerability, not my acquisition strategy. So I'm just supposed to work for my little brother now? Report to you after you undermine me? You're supposed to decide what you actually want, Alexander. If it's to continue the family legacy by helping Strathmore succeed under new leadership, there's a place for you. If it's to nurse grudges and pride, there isn't." He left angry that night, but returned to the office the following week. We established clear boundaries and expectations, with Alexander heading international business development, an area that utilized his relationship-building skills while keeping him away from operational decisions. Our professional reconciliation remained fragile, but over months of working together, mutual respect slowly developed. He brought valuable perspectives I lacked, particularly regarding client relationships, while grudgingly acknowledging the improvements my technological integration had created. 6 months after the acquisition, Jessica and I were married in a small ceremony attended by close friends and my cautiously supportive family. Nathan served as best man, having overseen the successful technical integration of our systems into Strathmore's operations. From coding on my couch to marrying the CFO and owning a manufacturing empire, he teased during his speech. "Some guys have all the luck," but luck had little to do with it. The path from rejected son to successful entrepreneur had required years of 80-hour weeks, constant learning, and perseverance through multiple near failures. The external validation of acquiring my family's company was satisfying, but the internal knowledge that I had built something valuable on my own terms meant far more. In the year following the acquisition, I established the Strathmore Innovation Scholarship, funding technology education for students from traditional manufacturing communities. The program specifically sought applicants with unconventional ideas for integrating technology into established industries. "You're still trying to prove something," my father commented when I announced the scholarship at an industry conference. "Still fighting old battles." "No," I corrected him. "I'm trying to prevent others from having to fight those battles at all. Innovation shouldn't be at odds with tradition. They should strengthen each other." He considered this, then nodded slowly. "Your grandfather would have approved. He was considered a radical in his day, too." It was perhaps the most meaningful acknowledgement he had ever offered. Not comparing me to Alexander or measuring me against his expectations, but connecting me to the innovative spirit that had founded our family business. 2 years after the acquisition, I took a private moment to visit my grandfather's original factory, now preserved as a museum piece within our modern facility. Standing among the vintage equipment, I reflected on the journey that had brought me full circle, from rejected heir to owner, from family outcast to reluctant patriarch. The greatest lesson wasn't about revenge or vindication. It wasn't even about the power of technology to transform traditional businesses, though that had certainly been proven. The most important understanding was that true success required being faithful to your own vision while respecting the foundations others had built. I had spent years trying to prove my father wrong, only to discover that we were both partially right. His emphasis on tangible manufacturing and strong relationships complemented my focus on technology and efficiency. The integrated company was stronger than either approach in isolation. The healing wasn't complete, and some wounds would likely never fully close. But I had found peace with my family history while creating my own legacy. I had preserved what was valuable from the past while building something new for the future. What started as a rejection had become a journey of self-discovery and creation. The company that once symbolized my greatest failure now represented my most meaningful achievement, not because I owned it, but because I had transformed it into something better while honoring its essential character. That's the thing about family legacies. They're not meant to be static monuments to past achievements, but living entities that evolve with each generation. My grandfather innovated with mechanical systems, my father with business relationships, and I with digital integration. Different approaches united by the same fundamental purpose. As I prepare to welcome our first child next month, I wonder what innovations the next generation will bring. Whatever direction they choose, I'm determined to support their vision rather than impose my own. The most valuable inheritance isn't a company or fortune, but the freedom to define success on your own terms. Have you ever been underestimated by family or colleagues who couldn't see your vision? What did you do to prove them wrong or right? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the greatest motivation comes from those who doubt us most. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to pursue their own path, even when those closest to them don't understand. Thank you for listening to my journey from rejection to redemption. Remember, success isn't about revenge. It's about staying true to yourself while creating something of lasting value.